Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. Our dedication to living life joyfully allows us to confront the reality of unmitigated deception and political denial of the harm caused by nuclear and chemical contamination. We demand an end to corporate control of science and suppression of facts for political and financial gain. We are not assets on a balance sheet. We must honestly work together to remediate damage to benefit our planet and humanity. Remember, happiness is resistance, and love is greater than fear. Join the Age of Fission radio show on Spreaker.com. Search for Lonnie Clark for all our podcasted shows. Podcasts are also on YouTube at Nuts for Art, NUTZFORART. Thank you for being part of the solution. I want to thank you for joining us. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show, and I am very delighted to have Dave Parrish with Operation Save the Earth on my radio show again. I just finished listening to his weekly podcast, Fuku Fridays, on YouTube. You can follow him on Dave Parrish. That's Parrish. And I want to thank you for joining us here on the Age of Fission radio show, where you can follow us on Spreaker. I also carry Dave's podcast called, I have it under Operation Save the Earth. It's Fuku Fridays. And I carry the Nuclear Hot Seat on my Spreaker channel under Lonnie Clark. So I want to thank you for following us there. Also, you can follow me on Nuts for Art, NUTZFORART on YouTube. Dave, thanks for joining us, man. I just finished listening to your 10-minute podcast, and it rabble-roused me again, because the thing I wanted to talk to you about is we always talk about doing the right thing. The reason we're doing this is because we know we have kind of a, not just a moral obligation, but it feels like the right thing to tell people that they are not being told the truth about nuclear or chemical contamination, the depths of the pollution that we have going on. Right?
No, of course not. Because if they told us the real deal, about everything that's going on with, contamination and all of that, people would lose their minds. They would freak out.
That's what they say, but I don't think people would freak out. I think people would have to organize, and they would demand answers, right? Like we can do, we have seen atrocities. I think we need to reframe that, though, because we need to not freak out. It is our reality. We do not need to keep being in denial. That's why you and I keep doing this, right? So I'm at saturation point, because 3/11 is Monday. This interview is being conducted on 3/9. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not going to play on KEPW until after 3/11. I'm going to put it up on my Spreaker podcast this weekend, so it will play up by 3/11. But I feel very strongly like we have had 8 years of serious, like the world shook when Fukushima happened. Yeah. Everybody is now, there's like a click in your brain. It's like the day 9/11 happened. The world changed. Things were different from then on, because the curtain has kind of been drawn back, right? So this is why people give us like that, look, like, oh, you're just going to keep scaremongering us and fearmongering us about the radioactivity. We know it's there and there's nothing we can do, so why talk about it? That's literally, I think, the fundamental basis of the complicity, the silent complicity. But the question is...
Yeah, but I mean, here's the question I have back for those people, Lonnie, is like, is there really nothing that you can do about it? Really? Because there's tons of things that you can do about it. Little things that you can do every day to not support the nuclear power industry.
Okay, let's talk about,
right?
Let's list off some things right this very second. Like, let's just talk about ones, and I will write them down and put them in the podcast notes so that people can remember them.
Right.
Because, yes, I agree with you. There are things, and this is exactly where I want my show to go, to be honest. I'm sick of talking about the levels and the contamination, because the hard fact is I found out that the contamination, frankly, is everywhere. Like if it's not nuclear, it's chemical. If it's not chemical, it's plastic. It's like one thing after another. It's just been literally out of control. So, okay, what are the 10 things? Let's list some things that we can do to... And what do we want to call this? Like, it's not resist, but remediate, resolve, thrive, be survivors to thrivers.
Yeah, I like that, survivors to thrivers, because, this just in, folks, we got along, as a species, got along without nuclear energy just fine for thousands of years. Now, I understand, we all have computers and cell phones that we have to plug in, and there's a greater need for electricity now than there was, 1,000 years ago. Okay, sure. But there's still things that you can do now, today, with the technology that we have, that can reduce your load on, what is being used for nuclear energy. Now, keep in mind, here in the United States, what is it, less than 20% of our energy comes from nuclear power plants? That's correct, yes. And that means the rest is provided by what? Solar, wind, gas plants, coal-fired plants, geothermal, and hydroelectric, right? So you have all these other options, right? You can choose to invest in solar, choose to invest in wind, have that investment come back to you in savings.
But Dave, that is not a viable option. Investing in solar means zero to people living in apartment complexes.
But it should mean more, because if everybody did, and everybody was feeding off a microgrid instead of, whatever you're paying, whichever company you're paying,
so
$70, $80, $90
right now,
a month.
I live in Eugene, Oregon. I'm not part of the city. We're part of eWeb. We can't even get appointments with our utility company representatives. You can go to the meetings and talk about what you want. But, we have been trying to talk, Louisa Hamachek, myself, the women for peace here in town, the women in black. They stand out every Monday in front of the courthouse, the women for peace. They dress in black and they stand silently. They literally, there's a group of 10 that, from what I can see in Eugene, Oregon, 10 people who have been actively seeking to get the Columbia Generating Station for us to not buy we are mandated to buy 4% of their energy.
See? See how they work?
Yes. And not
mandated.
Just even that.
You have to.
Exactly. And in order for that to happen, we have to get our water commissioners to say, okay, we don't want to have it. But our water commissioners, when you try to contact them, they don't even return your phone calls. There's their phone numbers are there, but they don't hear you. They're not responsible to you. They're responsible to their bosses at the utility company who tell them, we need that nuclear. We're keeping it.
Exactly. So, and I'm sure that their bank accounts are fatter because of it.
To me, I'm just pushing back because you say invest in solar. Yes, I think that's awesome when people can invest in anything alternative. Yes. And in fact, Mimi Gurman with Radcast and No Nukes Northwest, when she was part of No Nukes Northwest, and I think she can still get this deal, she hooked into some man in Colorado who, if we can buy something like 20 of them on one pallet, they will cost the equivalent of $200 per person. So each thing, so we could not get 200 people because we didn't know how to market ourselves, to be honest. That's really what happened. Is we had this beautiful idea, but that's what it takes. See, this is what I think, Dave. This is why I have you on the radio show, because I appreciate your Fuku Friday. Your videos have kept me going. The last few weeks I interviewed Thomas Ackerman. He's like, here you're doing it. You're still plugging away at it, right? But I personally am very exhausted from having to do it for maybe 150, 400, less. I mean, I want millions. When I started this, I had these big rosy ideas that we would like get the post-ignorance project going, and we could have connected outlets all across the United States of 15, 20 people in every little city. Because the thing is, we are all post-ignorant. That was a great phrase to come up with, because once you cannot unknow this, you cannot unhear it, you cannot unbreathe plutonium. Let's just be clear, and we have all breathed plutonium. It's there. This is the dirty secret they don't want us to know. Here I go again, monopolizing the conversation, Dave. I apologize.
Don't. I'll give it a second thought. Lonnie, it's your show.
I do, because I want to have your feedback on this, because, okay, so you say invest in alternatives. Okay, let's write. What's the second one?
Yes. The second one is, hey, I don't have $20,000 for a solar unit for my house or whatever. Okay. That was a pretty valid excuse back in the 70s, and a little bit less so here in 2019. But, what are some other ways?
No, it's not even being able to. Like, people cannot have them. Like, I know where I live, I would likely not be allowed to put up a solar unit on my roof, even though I live in progressive Eugene. Yes, I'm a renter, and they considered that invasive on their property.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so you see what I'm saying? It's not that people can't invest. There's a huge portion of the population who live in apartments, who live in complexes. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's great if you...
Oh, sure.
Like, my friend actually did that, and you know what happened? The city of Eugene had a program where they got off $1,500 a year tax deduction for putting solar on their house, and now they buy the solar from their house, and they pay a utility bill of like $10 a month. They still get a small utility bill just for running the meter, but that household is giving the city of Eugene energy.
Yeah, exactly. And see, that's the thing, when it comes to energy consumption and needs, let's talk about the consumption part real quick. Now,
so that's a way to do it. Reduce your consumption.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reducing your consumption, that's something that we can all do on a personal level. How many of us leave our Wi-Fi routers on all night? Most of us. You know why? Because we don't think about it. We don't think about turning it off and saving those 8 hours of, high energy output that the router's going to do, or our gaming systems, or our cable boxes. These are huge energy suckers.
My daughter has her Wi-Fi on an automatic timer, so it just turns off automatically.
See, that's smart.
At 10:30, and it comes back on at 5:30.
Yeah, if everyone did that, do you know how much money all of us would save? And this is getting back to what you were talking about before, Lonnie. If it doesn't affect us personally, not too many people are going to jump up and make waves about things, right? But what affects all of us? Utility bills affects all of us, right? Because we all got to pay, right? Whether you're renting, whether you're owning, everybody's got to pay. Unless you're living completely off the grid, you got to pay somebody for your utility, right? So, I mean, and that's an expense that we all have to budget into what we pay out every month, right? So here's what I'm talking about. You want to make nuclear less important, use less energy, right? And all you got to do is like your daughter did, put that timer on. Make it a point for yourself. Oh, okay, I'm shutting down for the night. Unplug this, unplug that. You're all done. And you're saving huge amounts of money every year.
You want to know what? I got an eWeb. eWeb came in and checked my apartment, and I got a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. But they said besides the lack of insulation in this little apartment that I live in, I could reduce just by unplugging my television. And I did that. My bill went down by like $43.
Exactly.
I did one
exactly
thing.
What I'm talking about right here.
I did one thing, and my bill went down by $43. I was like, "Say what?" So then I really went in and unplugged like all the kitchen utensils that, the blender. I didn't even think about it. The blender, all those things. It's kind of a little science experiment that I'm doing, but I think it is working, and you're right. Okay, so that's number 2. What's number 3, Dave?
Let's see, from survivor to thriver. What we need to know is our environment better. How close do you live to a nuclear generating station by miles? How close do you live to waste sites, dump sites?
Brownfields, they're called brownfields, not just fuse wrap.
Right.
They're called fuse wrap and brownfields. People need to know those words.
Exactly.
I can't exactly. All I know is that they're dump waste sites. A brownfield is slightly less harmful than a fuse wrap site, but neither of them is good.
Neither is good, right. So how close do you live to it, and are you downwind of it? Knowing where you are in the world is important. I'll never forget, I was driving up to Utah last year for a convention, and I brought my Geiger counter along with me just to see, how things were along the way. Mm-hmm. And in some spots, it was really, really low. In some spots, it was pretty high. Wow. Like Sulphurdale in Utah. Why is it so high here? And then, you come to find out months later, hey, that whole southern part of Utah is very radioactive, and people get sick there all the time. And this is what I'm saying. You got to know your environment. You have to know where you live. You have to know where the danger is coming from at all times. It's one thing to, just put on blinders and, be ignorant and try to float through life, saying that nothing's going to harm me. Guess what? That's going to be true for about 1 out of 10 people, where absolutely nothing's going to touch them. They're just going to go through life and die, of old age without any complications. Good for them, right? The rest of us, though, we got this to deal with, that to deal with, and the other thing to deal with. And most of it is related to our health, with heart disease, with lung disease, with cancers, and that's a myriad
autoimmune
that are available to us now.
It's true.
Yes,
so
the list
Dave,
goes on and on. And what are those related to, Lonnie? What are all those diseases related to? What your environment is, what you're taking in, right? So, you have to be conscious of that. It's super important.
Well, it's a chemical and nuclear contamination. Part of that is also, I think, in knowing your environment is just take it for granted. If you see a fire in a forest fire or anywhere in the United States, you can pretty much know that it is going to reignite chemical and nuclear contamination back into the air. And, Luke Perry recently died, and you know what I mean? Like of a stroke, right? Mm-hmm. Now, he was in the Los Angeles area, and the Santa Susana Field Lab happened last year. And I bet you 2 to 1, we are seeing a serious increase in strokes and heart disease and cancers in the Los Angeles area that is not being identified.
I think you're right about that.
I think we need to that's part of knowing your environment. Just take it for granted. If you hear of a big, you need to know your environment. Know if you live near a brownfield or a fuse wrap site. Know what chemical contaminations, what, how it's a good way? Go to the EPA and type in your city and the word toxic. Mm-hmm. That's what I did.
That's a really good way. What did you find out?
Oh my goodness, I was dumbfounded. I moved out of California because I lived in Redondo Beach. I moved there in 1998, around 1999, the end of 99 to 2000. From then on, I moved in 2002. Every time I touched the sand, my feet itched like a mad, just like horrible. And if I went in the water, I got sick. I got a flu for 3 weeks. Right. So I moved away. I'm I called the city and they said it was the sewage up in coming down from, it only happened every once in a while. And it was coming up from Sepulveda sewage plant right up by the poor part of LA that feeds into the ocean. And I'm like, oh, so I moved away. I thought, well, that's not, I can't live above and go live in Malibu. That's super out of my range, right?
Right.
So when I moved away, it actually, when I Googled this, and I happened to Google it because I got into a conversation with a health physicist about that nuclear contamination is, yes, quite horrible, but the chemicals they use and in a lot of different environments, not just the nuclear environment, but a lot of industry, is causing a more immediate direct effect on people's health immediately now, and that is a greater danger. So I went to the EPA and typed in Redondo Beach toxic. It turns out that around the corner in San Pedro, now Redondo Beach is on a peninsula, so around the peninsula was San Pedro, which is the bay, and there's a port, and it's kind of not a good area, kind of a raunchy area. But then around the corner is this very high Palos Verdes area with a bunch of rich people, and then the beach is around there. Right in the back is where we lived, the Redondo Beach. So when I walked, turns out that over there they were making DDT, and this company called Belmont, they were pouring their chemical waste into the Pacific Ocean, just doing it, and the EPA was monitoring them for 15 years doing this. And then in 2002, they decided that they needed to make them stop. It was in 1999, and this was odd because in 1999 I saw them putting these big, huge boulders up around the rocks where the rich people lived, because there was these huge cliffs when it came around on the peninsula. So they were moving in these big, gigantic boulders, like it looked like they were trying to build a barrier. And we're like, who would climb up there anyways? I thought it was a weird thing for these people to be building. Turns out the EPA recommended this barrier to be built to keep the chemical contamination from coming up the beach. All of the symptoms I had were the exact symptoms being experienced by all the people on the other side of the coast, on the beach there.
Right.
All of them. So that just blew me. And here in Oregon, right up in Albany, we have a fuse wrap site because that's where they used to process the nickel for the nuclear bomb making processing. So it's hugely contaminated. It's considered an at-risk fuse wrap site right in Albany. There is no signs, and the radiation, the Geiger counter, I took my Geiger counter up there in like this little 1 mile area, is off the charts.
Oh, I'd believe it. I would believe it. Everything you just said here, Lonnie, just illustrates the point. If you'd known about the contamination at Redondo Beach, you wouldn't have been on that beach in the first place.
No.
Right? If you had, or if the EPA had, who took 15 years of monitoring, EPA really took you this long to, come up with some kind of
That's what
plan?
I thought, David. Exactly.
Y'all should have shut down this Belmont outfit a long time ago.
Okay, 5 years. Okay, when I first read, I thought,
ridiculous.
5 years, but they literally let a child be born and come into maturity before they stopped them.
Unbelievable. I'm surprised more people aren't sick.
A lot more people were sick.
Did the county or the National Oceanographic Society or anybody put any kind of warnings out at Redondo Beach?
Well, there are
during
now.
This DDT?
You know what? When I went back,
now there are.
Now there are. They literally, there's little crosses on the, the skull and cross when you walk up and down Redondo Beach with the sign, the swim at your own risk kind of a thing. Poisons might be in the water.
Yeah.
In Redondo Beach.
And more likely, right? And you just said it yourself. It's happening in Oregon. It's happening in Northern California. It's happening everywhere, all up and down the West Coast.
I think it's called
from
Lakewood.
Seattle down. You're just going to get that in spots. There's just going to be very bad contamination spots, not nuclear, but these other industrial chemical things that are just being dumped.
It's easy to find out, though. Find what state you're in, though. As you say, that's a really good advice. Know your environment, because with Mr. Google, you can just type in your state, your city, and say uranium near me, or nuclear contamination near me, or chemical contamination near me. I mean, you can just Google simple things like that, right? Like I just typed in Redondo Beach toxins, right, and on the EPA website, and I found this study that was like, wow. So it's the information, interestingly enough, is there. Now, This is the point. So this is why we need a number 4, Dave. What do we do when, okay, we know our environment and we can keep ourselves safe by not eating and not exposing ourselves to the chemicals and, figuring out a way around it, even if we're in a city near it. You just don't go to the beach. You don't put your feet in the ocean. You stop doing things that you used to want to do. You can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't do it somewhere else. You can't do it there.
Yeah. Right.
So what's a number 4?
And, before everyone's... number 4 should be, let's see, from survivor to thriver, you need to basically understand this is, I think, super important. And I don't think people really, to this day, understand this. That the nuclear power industry is completely beholden to the nuclear weapons industry. The nuclear power industry would not exist if nuclear weapons hadn't existed first, right? These are things that are intrinsically linked. So, you can't just say, oh, well, I don't support nuclear bombs because nuclear war is obviously bad and everyone's going to die. I've seen war games. Bad things will happen if we go there. Okay, that's great. But if you are, against nuclear weapons but for nuclear power, you've just canceled yourself out. You've literally just canceled yourself out because you are still supporting nuclear, right? Nuclear is nuclear is nuclear is nuclear, okay? Now, and that fuel chain cycle from start to finish, from by the time we dig that uranium out of the earth and turn it into a pellet that goes into some cladding that goes into a nuclear reactor, this is a long process that it has to go through, right? And there's all kinds of contaminants, there's all kinds of pollutants that take place with that. Anybody who says that nuclear power is carbon neutral is talking out their butts, basically, because that's simply not the case. It's simply not the case. And I also love the pro-nukers who say, oh well, when you're making solar panels, that's just as bad for the environment as nukes. It's probably more so. I'm like, really? How about this, pro-nuker? Let me ask you this question. When something bad goes on at a nuclear power station here in the United States, we still have how many of those? 120 that are still, not all decommissioned, everything. When something bad like that happens, what has to happen? Whoever owns the plant has got to call the governor and say, hey, governor, this is happening. Whatever meltdown, whatever, accident is happening. When something bad happens to your solar panel, what happens? You call whoever puts your solar panel up and they come and fix it. See the difference? You see the difference? One affects
this is the big difference.
People.
Okay,
the other
this is what they're talking about, because the solar panels also use uranium. They also have some very bad things in them, but not to the scale, and they don't exponentially explode. The other part is the lie. This is what I think. The nuclear industry needs to downsize and become scientific. They need to figure out what to do with what they've done. They've got so much waste. Like, we should not be expanding nuclear power. We should be putting billions into understanding nuclear power. They do not understand it. We have Fukushima, Chernobyl, Sellafield, Hanford out of control. These things are failing science experiments because they're trying to pretend they know what they're doing. They need to come clean and say, wait, John Goffman said, nuclear power in itself is thrilling and exciting, but unless we understand it, we are going to destroy our planet. That was his statement in a nutshell.
Yep.
And
that's accurate.
Fukushima has forced us into, now 3/11 is coming up on Monday, and we are not seeing millions of people in the street saying, what we saw this week was an article by CNN that made me want to vomit, to be honest. Did you see that article about how great the ice wall was that CNN put out?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even get past the headline. I just started laughing so hard. I was like, oh, the ice wall is protecting us from all the radiation. Really?
They
really?
are so how cruel for them to put out an obvious lie. And I actually think, I actually believe that they give these journalists drugs when they go there. Like, I think they give them something in their sake and take them in there with some kind of, so that they can tell them, they bring them into like a fake scene and like a little movie scene, and they think that they're in there. I believe that they're just brainwashed completely. I would not put it past the nuclear industry.
It's easy to think that, Lonnie, and, who knows what kind of shenanigans have taken place because of the cover-up that began on March of 2011 and continues still to this day. But, the reality is that, when Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes went there last year to check on things, to see how things were going, this is only the second time 60 Minutes did anything with Fukushima at all. When Leslie Stahl went there, you could tell by the look on her face that she was just appalled at how little things have progressed since this all started. She was just, you could tell, she's like, she probably went there with the mindset that, this will be all good. This is just a little robot story that I'm going to be doing. Not really. You could tell she was really surprised. And this is true of others that I've seen over the past 8 years that have gone to Fukushima Daiichi, seen for themselves with their own eyes the real scope, the real, damage that took place there. And it's very sobering. It's very sobering for everyone who actually goes and experiences it for themselves. Anybody who tells you, the little pie in the sky stuff, everything's fine, don't worry about it, go back to eating your fish tacos, they're being paid to do so. CNN has been paid to do so this whole time. That's why when I was so shocked a couple weeks ago when the Washington Post, the writer in the Washington Post actually admitted that there was a cover-up in play because of what happened at Fukushima Daiichi. This is the first time the Post has admitted anything like this. I mean, and this is for years and years and years. The Post has been like, nothing's wrong at Fukushima. We're not going to report it. I remember sending them an email. Wow. Years and years and years ago. I sent the editor-in-chief an email saying, what are you guys doing about Fukushima? Of course, nothing. Cricket's back. No, of course, nothing, right? And it's only now, it's only recently, it's only in the last year or so that this cover-up is starting to thaw because, for years and years, Lonnie, you know that everyone thought we were crazy. Everybody thought that we were just internet fear-mongers who thought, that this was right on line with the lizard people and the aliens and all the other conspiracy theories out there that have been floating around for decades, right? Oh, well, you're overreacting, Dave, all of this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. No. Okay? The reality is this. What happened at Fukushima Daiichi in March 2011 is unprecedented. No accident on this level has ever taken place. And you can, quote me on that. Whoever says that Chernobyl is still worse than Fukushima, I just got to tell you this. If that's the case, then how come Fukushima is still leaking into the ocean to this day? It's almost 8 full years since this started, and it's been leaking into the atmosphere, into the ocean, into the atmosphere, into the ocean every single day. What? So Chernobyl's worse? Really? I don't think so. Chernobyl's got a second house on top of it so that the radiation doesn't get out. Fukushima doesn't even have one house on top of it.
The difference is this. See, people don't see, and I'm not in Japan, but I have heard that they euthanize their children that come out mutated and have severe disabilities. I don't know if
I've heard that too.
True.
I've not gotten
but
confirmation.
It goes in accord with the fact that they don't have high numbers, like in Chernobyl. Because in Russia they're Catholic, they are not euthanizing any of their babies, and the Catholic Services, right, which is also the Irish Catholic Fund, they have children. They take in children from these villages, and it's very well known. We're in the 3rd generation of mutated children born with huge brains, mangled bodies, just really severe disabilities, which This is the sad part. Like their culture in Japan, I believe, euthanizes those children, and they think it's merciful, which is up to them. I don't judge them. I actually tend to agree. You know what I mean? I don't know how hard a child. I don't know. I think nature has its course. I think it's actually kind of weird science to like keep a child alive who nature would not allow to live anyways. You know what I mean? It's weird for me. So I'm not saying, but what's sad about it is the lying that's going on. If that's true, they're not, or are they keeping track and keeping it secret? So this is the weird part. We're living in this. When, that's the hard part, understanding where you are in relationship and even saying, yeah, some nuclear power is good. No, I completely agree with you. Nuclear power is 100%. We need to stop all of it, and we need to figure out what we've got going on. So what's number 5? Do you have another one?
Let's see. The next one from Survivor to Thriver, I would say, is education. Putting your head in the sand about how nuclear worked. Take it from me. I did that my whole life until Fukushima happened. All right? I didn't know nothing about nothing when it came to nuclear energy.
Me too.
It was just a thing. It was just, that, gas, coal, blah, 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 right? It was just a thing. But now that I know how nuclear, the whole fuel cycle, everything that you need to know, the history, the sordidness of it all, and how the greed of it has impacted the lives of
and the fact that it is
millions of people.
It's intrinsically tied to nuclear war and military control of the planet. They literally, Alvin Weinstein gave a speech in 1962 that was not open to the press until 2010, where they said, we are the nuclear priesthood. They have created a Faustian bargain with us because they need us. And this is exactly what they have done on steroids. And so you were right. It is very interesting. But also learn how to take care of your body. Learn to be healthy. Learn to resist.
Yeah. Exactly.
Take lots of vitamin C. Get good, healthy magnesium. Spend extra money on organic food. It matters to stay off of chemicals and GMOs. It matters. And if people do that, those industries will die because nobody will be buying them.
Exactly. You vote with your dollars. You're 100% right about that. And what are you doing? You're educating and you're safeguarding yourself at the same time. That's step 1 of our 4-step plan at Operation Save the Earth. That's the whole thing. You have got to take that step for yourself. If you continue to stick your head in the sand, and 10, 15, 20 years from now, when you start, coughing up blood because you have lung cancer, or, oh my gosh, how come I'm falling down all the time? Oh, we find out that you have a brain tumor that came from this or that or the other thing. And it's like, don't be surprised later. That's what I'm saying. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I ever got during this whole journey was from Kevin Blanch, and he said that live like you already have cancer. Because if you do that, and if you are conscious every day of what you're putting in your body, what your environment is, what your intake is, from whatever it is, you're going to be a leg up. You'll live longer. You will live longer. So, isn't that what everybody wants to do? And you'll live happier. See, it's
not. This is the thing. Yeah. Like, I'm not interested in fear mongering, but part of the education is learning how to live happier. Like, I want to consciously know about what's going on in my environment, so I can not go to a place like. I used to go to the beach and go walking on the coast, every morning, but I had to wear tennis shoes so I wouldn't get sick. That's a simple bit of education. I learned it through practice because at the time I knew something was in the sand because there was a huge difference, right? So I think we unconsciously do this. Now, at the time, I did try to find out, but it never occurred to me to go to the EPA and do that until I began this journey. Like, I've learned how to do research. Right. So Education is so right, Dave. That is so important.
Doing that research, it's so hard. It's so hard. Look, it's a steep learning curve with nuclear. I understand that. Take it from me. It took me a long, long time. Do you know how many reports and testimonials and experts I had to listen to?
Yeah.
Just to get the understanding that I understand. It takes time. But isn't it worth it in the long run?
Yeah, because it's not like you have to constantly listen to it. Dave, what are your 4 steps on Operation Save the Earth? Tell me what your 4 steps are again.
Sure. Step 1, the most important one is educate and safeguard. You got to know more, do more, be more about what the problem is, and that is the nuclear problem. And that's something that's spanned all of our lives. It's been, in play for 70 years now, and will continue to be so until every nuclear plant is shut down.
Educate yourself and safeguard. Figure out ways to protect yourself from what you've learned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and there's easy ways you can do that. Little supplements, like you talked about earlier, taking magnesium, vitamin C. Little things like that.
Half a teaspoon. Dr. Circa says a half a teaspoon of baking soda every morning will keep the toxins out of your body.
That sounds like excellent advice.
A half a teaspoon of baking soda.
And how hard is that? How hard is that? And then here's the other part. What you're taking in. How about the fish? Right? You still eating that sushi?
Yeah.
Folks, really, I have peace of mind because I don't eat any fish.
Yeah,
and I know that because I don't eat any fish, I don't have to worry about what's in the fish to kill me. Right? So, but Dave, I love sushi. I love fish. Hey, guess what? So did I. I used to love sushi, and salmon is one of my all-time favorite foods in the universe. But you know what? Some things are not worth it. And there are other things on the menu that I can try when I'm out, right? So let's see what those are. And I'm sure they're just as yummy, and they sure as heck have been. I really don't miss it anymore. I don't miss the fish anymore. I don't miss the sushi anymore because, I look at it now. It's like, why don't you just give me a pack of cigarettes? I mean, you're just pushing cancer. So I don't think so. Oh, and I got to pay a lot for it too. No, that's
it's not
okay.
even just cancer. Like you could have a stroke, like Luke Perry. I really believe that Luke Perry had a stroke because he was exposed to the fire contamination from last summer at the Santa Susana fires. I think I bet you if you look at the rates of strokes and heart disease and cancers, epidemiological diseases that have gone up in that area since in the last year, I bet you they've seen a spike, but no one counts it.
Which is really just criminal to me because anytime, like you said earlier, anytime you see a forest fire, especially one that's around any type of nuclear site or dump site, any type of waste site, you need to run far away from there because you don't know what you're going to be taking in. And they're not going to tell you until maybe much, much, much later, if they tell you at all. Mm-hmm. Right? That Santa Susana fire, or AKA Woolsey fire, that should have been classification 2 nuclear event. Right? Because you have the scale up to 7, right?
Look,
and this should be, everyone should have been like, hey, you know what? This fire is taking place right around the Santa Susana Field Laboratory, where we all know the Rocketdyne reactor melted down. So, what should you be doing? Staying away from that fire as much as possible. Leave the area. Don't come back for a week or 2, and then maybe it'll be okay. But any kind of warnings? It was only us, Lonnie, who was talking about that kind of thing. Only a few people on YouTube who are actually, raising the alarm, saying, "Hey, guess what? This Woolsey fire is a lot more dangerous than you probably think." And then of course, you're just scaremongering. The reaction that takes place after that.
They're going to have Fukushima
the sort of
Olympics. They really are going to go ahead with that. So they're not going to tell anybody. So what's number 2? What's number 2?
Oh, number 2 of our 4-step plan is evacuate Fukushima now. Now, here's the hard part with that step. You can't evacuate an area unless the government, and this is true in Japan, unless the government says you have to evacuate.
Right.
And a lot of residents, a lot of moms there in Fukushima Prefecture, and some of the other prefectures that were affected by the fallout from the triple meltdown at Fukushima Daiichi, have been pushing for the classification of evacuation to be put in place so that they can, receive assistance, so they could find housing so they could find someplace else to move and be safe, right? And they've been fighting for that for the past 8 years now, and the government has taken the opposite approach. Oh, we're going to reopen this area. We're going to reopen this area. We're going to say, hey, you can move back in, but it can only be from this hour to this hour during the daytime, because after that we can't guarantee your safety, right? And it's like, you know what? Why are you doing this, Japanese government? Wow. Oh, wait, because it is so important to you to make sure that we have these Olympics in Tokyo in 2020. This 2-week event takes precedence over the health and safety of our populace. That's what that government is saying. And why is that? Why is that? 2 reasons. Because Prime Minister Abe, when he was a little boy, he was so proud of when Japan was, the Olympic hosting country back in 1962, 64, something like that. And he wanted to bring that sort of spirit back to Japan, right? And I'm sure that's great for you, Prime Minister Abe. You were so proud that you had to dress up like Super Mario at the Rio Games, at the end of the Rio Games, to tout your pride. That's great. But the other reason why is what? Because the Olympics as a whole, it's part of this larger strata that goes on that you and I don't really have anything to say about, right? Who pays for the Olympics? And who paid for the Olympics for years and years and years? General Electric. Why? Because NBC had the Olympics for years and years. NBC still has the Olympics. Now, General Electric doesn't really own NBC anymore. General Electric doesn't own anything anymore, because that company is going down the toilet, but quick. Well, no wonder why, because when you invest heavily in nukes and then your stocks take a dump after Fukushima, hey, guess what? You are in big trouble with that investment. And then you figure out how to reinvest General Electric. Real smart. So, with this, apparatus in place, because every time they choose the Olympic site, right, it's a process. Do you have the facilities? Do you have the manpower? Do you have all this other stuff to, basically, have this 2-week event where literally thousands of people are going to show up, and not just elite athletes, but spectators as well. And it's going to be this huge to-do. It is. It's this huge marketing thing, right, that it generates literally millions of dollars through ad revenue and so forth. For what? For the 2 weeks, for these few people to get rich and, keep doing it every 4 years, whether it's winter, whether it's summer, it doesn't matter. It's just, like I said, an apparatus like the nuclear power industry, where it's like, it's all about the money, right? So you have the IOC, which is like, hey, Japan's doing great in their preparations. We don't care if, Fukushima is melting down still or not. Prime Minister Abe is cool with us.
Well, I think it's perfect for them,
you
Dave.
Guys are still
I think they want it. I think that's what they want, because it really does normalize nuclear contamination. Now people just expect to be contaminated. That's the ridiculousness of it. Like, evacuate Fukushima now is really a moot point, because they have no intention of evacuating anybody. In fact, they plan on filling that place up, and they're starting to give tours. They're even doing it in Chernobyl.
Right. Oh, I know.
It's beyond. It's inhumane. What's number 3? We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to get to all 4.
Sure. Number 3 is control and contain the situation at the plant, because Fukushima Daiichi, like I said, it's still leaking. Ice wall or not, it is still leaking into the ocean.
That ice wall, that article on the ice wall was a big fat lie. If anybody really read the studies, that what they say, what that guy interpreted was really interesting. You could tell it came directly from TEPCO. He did not investigate anything that he said, he wrote in there. Because if he had done any
TEPCO
research...
propaganda? Oh.
Yeah, because that ice wall is of particular interest of mine, because I used to follow it closely until I stopped following it, because it's basically a failed experiment. It turned the ground around there into slush. It did not melt it. It unstabilized the foundations. So what they've done now is they put in these slats, and then they put in these balls, essentially these round balls, and they're filling these round, because they had to put something down, these big heavy sheet metals, to stabilize the foundation, because the foundations were kind of getting, the ice wall, the whole thing was just a mess. So they put down these flat sheets.
But
and then,
it was a multi-million-dollar mess, right? TEPCO,
still
asked for money and said, "Hey, and they're still spending money on that thing."
Billions.
And I knew when they first announced it, I was like, "Man, they better check their slide rules and make sure that they get the right size for this ice wall," because I was expecting something much larger than what they actually came up with, right? Oh, we're just going to bore down and stick some pipes down there, and the pipes are going to freeze the soil. You guys needed pipes that were like 6 times larger than what you guys were actually using.
They needed way more.
Way more. So what they gave us is the Band-Aid, and it's a loose Band-Aid at that, because is it 100% efficacy with that wall? Absolutely not. We've proven that's been the case. And then, getting back to Leslie Saw in the 60 Minutes robots there, we had TEPCO go down with robots last month, and what'd they do? They picked up a couple of pebbles from reactor 2, and then they put them back down because they don't have any place to put the pebbles yet.
Huge
They don't have a plan.
That was considered a huge
for what
success.
to do with the waste in the reactors, because even the Nuclear Regulatory Association there in Japan is like, hey guys, hey TEPCO, you kind of need a plan for what to do with all this melted fuel when you do get it out, because you don't have one right now.
Well, they don't have a plan for any melted fuel anywhere on the entire planet, Dave. Let's get real.
Right.
Much less at Fukushima. That is the number one story of every single nuclear facility. What do you do with the waste? Right. Really, you can't keep hiding it. This is why they need to shut the nuclear industry down, and they need to really focus on the science of what to do with the waste. And then once they understand that, then they can reignite. Okay, I'm not against the nuclear industry as long as they can figure out what to do with the waste. And we have way too much now. It's obviously contaminated our environment. We need to have an honest conversation. That's my feeling. Is like we need honest conversation about this, period. We cannot keep...
I agree 100%. And that goes to step 4 of the plan, which is the declarative statement that is nuclear power is over. You understand, nuclear power industry, that 3 strikes, you know what 3 strikes are? That means you're out, right? 3 strikes, you're out. Yeah. So let's count it now. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima. What is that, Lonnie? Is that 3? Is that 3 strikes? It looks like 3 strikes to me.
That's enough.
That means you're out.
That's all. That doesn't count all the ones we haven't counted, Dave. The Santa Susana Field Lab was the first nuclear meltdown. They had several there that no one ever talked about. Like, there are nuclear meltdowns that nobody talks about on military bases, on accidents, small accidents here. It has to be over. And I would say this, like, they need to downsize and study. We need to pour billions of dollars into it to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this waste? They need to get serious. This playing footsie with this whole thing and being coy and rewording things and pretending like, oh, well, we know what we're doing because we're so smart. It's just they got to learn some humility. This is outrageous.
Well, it's hard to do that, Lonnie, when you've been so successful for 70 years, making billions of dollars. I mean, that money just keeps rolling in. Why get serious about, the waste issue when, you're making billions of dollars just creating more waste, right? So they don't care about that.
What can we do on 311, Dave? We have about 2 minutes left. What can we do on 311?
What we can do on 311 is, again, take step 1 for yourself. If you don't know much about what happened at Fukushima Daiichi, you have no excuse now, because there are tons and tons and tons of resources available to you online, whether it's a documentary to watch, whether it's a study to read, whether it's a symposium video to watch. There's just so much available now that very clearly shows that, the whole idea of Fukushima Daiichi and what happened there just being harmful internet rumor, that's just out the window at this point. If you still are saying harmful internet rumor, you're either being paid to do so or you're ignorant. These are your only 2 options at this point. And if you're ignorant, guess what? You can still learn. you can still learn about what is really going on at Fukushima Daiichi right now, today. It's just a click away. If you go to our website at OperationsSaveTheEarth.com, go to our helpful link section. It's the most comprehensive link section on the web for anything that's anti-nuclear. All the sites, all the blogs, all the resources are listed right there so that you can start your journey, so that you can understand more and start taking better care of yourself. Start helping your kids understand, what's really in their environment and how they can protect themselves, because they're the ones that are most at risk. Still, to this day, we're older, Lonnie. We're going to be dead and gone by the time Fukushima gets put to rest, right? It's the next generation that's going to have to be doing the heavy lifting, and they're the ones that really need to understand this. So, on March 11th of this year, go back and watch. Go back and see. Know your history. And understand that here, 8 years later, we haven't moved forward much more than an inch. Believe me. When they found nuclear fuel in reactor 2, when was that? Last year. It took them 7 whole years to find any kind of nuclear fuel. And when they did find it, they sent a robot down to pick up a couple pebbles. This is how far we've gotten. And believe me, a slushy ice wall and a pebble-picking robot are not enough for the contamination to keep coming, because it's still coming. All right? So, what do we got to do? We got to be able to do a lot of the things that we've been talking about here today. Be a thriver, not just a survivor, right? Understand things more for yourself and take action, right?
Yeah.
It's little things.
And those kinds of things will make you happy.
That's a little thing. Not eating the fish. That's a little thing. When it's raining outside after the Woolsey fire, man, don't be in that rain.
And if you
right?
have to
because
put
you don't know
a
what
scarf
kind of
over your
contaminants
mouth.
there are.
Use common sense. Put a scarf
How
over
hard
your
is
mouth.
that?
Simple
How hard
things.
is that? I mean, what we're talking about is the new common sense, because we live in a post-Fukushima world. 2,900 days later, look, everything after 3/11/11, this is the world we live in now, right?
That's right.
And you need to understand that if you stick your head in the sand, all you're going to do is leave some skeleton bones for the cockroaches to chew on, because that's it. Your fat head's going to be stuck in the sand, and your skeleton is going to be cockroach food. Is that the pretty look that you were going for? I don't think so.
I don't think so either, Dave. So with that, that's awesome. Oh, that's totally hilarious. I say that we live in the Age of Fission. That's why we named this show the Age of Fission. So this has been such a great interview. I'm going to post it up on Spreaker right away. I want to thank you, Dave. You've been listening to Dave Parrish with Lonnie Clark on the Age of Fission radio show. It is posted up on Spreaker and on my YouTube channel, Nuts for Art. And we really appreciate you listening to us here in Eugene, Oregon on KEPW 97.3 FM or www.kepw.org. And it's 97.3 FM LP, which means low power. So needed to say that. Thank you, Dave, for joining us. You guys put your courage feet on. And Dave, I hope we can do this again.
Me too, Lonnie.
Okay, we'll talk with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Age of Fission radio show. Please like, subscribe, and share on Spreaker.com or on the YouTube channel Nuts for Art, NUTZFORART. Send all comments and ideas to Lonnie Clark at ageoffission@gmail.com. We urge all, especially scientists and politicians, to follow the words of our beloved American icon, Mark Twain. Always do right. This will gratify some and astonish the rest.